How one Soviet KV-1 tanker single-handedly destroyed 22 German tanks and survived. A story of true valor and skill in wartime. August 1941. The war is in its second month. Army Group North encircles Leningrad from the south, aiming to cut off all supply lines. German tanks crush the Soviet defenses. Entire units retreat under the enemy onslaught. But there is a place where resistance becomes legendary. The Vavitzy State Farm near the town of Krasnogvardeysk, an important transportation hub on the approaches to Leningrad. On August 19, 1941, Tank Company Commander Senior Lieutenant Zinovy Kolobanov receives an order that sounds both like a death sentence and an honor. Block 3 roads leading to Krasnogvardeysk and stand to the death. His crew, in a single KV-1 tank, would stand between the German tanks and the Soviet city. The story of this man, his crew, and one of the most astonishing tank battles in the history of war. The path to glory begins with experience. Zinovy Kolobanov was no stranger to combat. A native of the village of Arafino in the Vladimir province, the son of a Red Army soldier killed in the Civil War, he underwent rigorous training. He studied at the Frunze Tank School, choosing Leningrad as his post in 1936, which, as Kolobanov himself admitted, he loved in absentia. The Finnish War became his baptism of arms. From November 1939 to March 1940, Kolobanov fought in the Leningrad region, this time against the Finns. His tank burned 3 times, but each time the crew survived and returned to duty. These combat experiences taught him the most important things. See the enemy before they see you. Choose a position that maximizes armor protection. Manage the tank's firepower so that every shot counts. When the Great Patriotic War began, Kolobanov served on the Kiev front. But in the first days of the war, he was transferred to the northern front, near Leningrad. He saw refugees, heard stories of Soviet units being encircled, and understood the scale of the catastrophe. But he also knew that such moments require not panic, but iron will and skill. His crew is a select group of specialists in their field. Gunner Senior Sergeant Andrei Mikhailovich Usov is a professional artillery instructor, a veteran of the wars in Poland and Finland, a man for whom the sight is not just a mechanism, but an extension of his own body. Senior driver mechanic Nikolai Ivanovich Nikiforov and junior driver mechanic Nikolai Feoktistovich Rodnikov know their tank so well that they can squeeze every last newton of power out of it. Radio operator gunner Pavel Ivanovich Kiselkov is ready to assist the gunner or commander at any time. It was a team that thought as one organism. Every member knew what the others were supposed to do, each ready to die for their comrade. When the German generals first saw the KV-1, they couldn't believe their eyes. This heavy tank, weighing over 47 tons, possessed incredible armor. Its design was based on the principle of sloped armor plates. Shells simply bounced off such a surface without penetrating it. The tank's 76mm gun was one of the most powerful in the world at the time. A shell fired from this gun could penetrate the armor of virtually any German tank of the 1941 model, Panzer I, II, and even newer vehicles with thicker armor. But there was one weak point: the optical observation devices. If the enemy noticed them and destroyed them, the tank would become half-blind. The commander would be unable to see, and the gunner would have difficulty finding a target. Therefore, Kolobanov planned the entire battle tactics so that the enemy couldn't simultaneously attack several external devices. On August 19th, the crew received orders and, at the same time, unique equipment. The tank's ammunition loadout was doubled, instead of the standard number of armor-piercing rounds. This meant that the ammunition loadout consisted of almost the tank is equipped entirely with anti-tank ammunition, allowing the crew to conduct combat operations without interruption for a long time. The tank takes up a position in a pre-prepared fortification 300 meters from a T-junction. On both sides of the road is a marshy meadow, preventing German tanks from turning and outflanking the KV-1. This strategic advantage is no accident. Kolobanov chose his position with a military mindset. The enemy would either have to attack from the front, where the armor is strongest, or turn around to attack from the side. But then their flanks would be exposed to fire from the road. On August 20th, around 2 p.m., the first signs of the enemy appear. German motorcyclist scouts pass by Kolobanov's position. He allows them to pass unhindered. Why fire on these light vehicles when tanks are supposed to be ahead? The scouts report to enemy headquarters. The road is clear, although something in the area looks suspicious. But the main order had already been given. The German tanks were moving toward the city. The entire column, 22 German light and medium tanks, presumably Czech tanks captured by the Germans, moved along the coastal road to the Vavitzy State Farm. Kolobanov spots the target and gives the command. The commander's voice is calm, though his heart is pounding like a drum. Landmark first, at the head, point blank, crossfire, armor-piercing, fire. Senior Sergeant Usov, who sees everything through the gun's sight, carries out the command. The KV-1 cannon spits out its first shell with a deafening roar. The first German tank instantly bursts into flames. It stands at the head of the column, on the road, blocking the rest. The second shot, another tank bursts into flames. The third, the column turns into an inferno. The Germans panic. They can't see where the fire is coming from. The tanks try to turn around, but the swamp on both sides prevents them. The vehicles collide with each other, become bogged down, and become targets on the hull of Kolobanov's tank. Usov shifts his fire to the rear of the column. Now the enemy can't retreat. The flaming tanks are catching fire behind them. They're trapped. The surviving German tank crews leap out of their hatches and become infantry, but the tanks continue to burn. For an hour of combat, Kolobanov's crew acts as one. The commander is in the turret, monitoring the battlefield through the periscope. The gunner is in the sights, tirelessly searching for targets. The driver is ready to move the tank at any moment if a maneuver is required. The radio operator monitors the radio and is ready to relay a report to headquarters. German shells begin to attack the KV-1. 114 shells hit the tank's turret, an insane number of hits. The armor feeds on impacts, resonates, but doesn't break. Inside the tank, it's noisy and hot, and breathing is difficult due to gunpowder smoke, but the crew works. In an hour of combat, Kolobanov's crew knocks out all 22 German tanks. They fired 98 armor-piercing shells from their doubled ammunition load, meaning that almost every third shot hits its target accurately. Such effectiveness is the result of professionalism and experience. Burning German vehicles turn the road into a graveyard. A pile of metal and hot steel blazes around the KV-1, and ammunition explodes. The German tank crews who managed to survive witness the incredible. A single tank has destroyed an entire column. One of the participants in the battle, the commander of the 1st Tank Regiment, recalls, "At the crossroads, a pile of German tanks was ablaze. A heroic battle, perhaps unprecedented in the history of the war. That's what Kolobanov's men did. they delayed the enemy advance in this important direction for a long time. But the battle isn't over. The Germans are trying to outflank the position from another direction. Kolobanov orders the driver to leave the trench and turn the tank around so the battle can continue at the new position. German P's KPFW-4 tanks, more powerful tanks with rifled guns, appear at the new position. They fire from a distance, attempting to distract Kolobanov and prevent him from accurately firing at the German infantry and troops attempting to break through. German anti-tank guns are brought up to close range. They fire point blank, attempting to hit the tank's more vulnerable parts. But the KV-1's armor holds. During this duel, Kolobanov's turret jams. It won't rotate, meaning the gun can no longer accurately fire at the anti-tank guns, which are delivering pinpoint strikes at close range. Kolobanov is forced to give the order to exit the trench and turn the tank around to maneuver. But this tank duel accomplished its main objective. Kolobanov engaged the German fire support tanks, which were unable to support the advance of the German infantry, and the second company of Soviet tanks under battalion commander Spiller destroyed the second German attack wave. After the battle, Kolobanov's tank bore over 100 dents. According to various sources, the number of hits ranged from 114 to 147 shells. The armor fulfilled its purpose. It saved the lives of this heroic crew. The results of the battle shocked the command. Division Commander General Baranov could hardly believe the results of the battle. He sent a personal report stating that Senior Lieutenant Kolobanov's crew had destroyed 22 German tanks in a single battle. Kolobanov's entire tank company claimed 43 enemy tanks. Junior Lieutenant F. Sergeyev's crew, 8 tanks. Junior Lieutenant V.I. Lastochkin's crew, 4 tanks. Junior Lieutenant I.A. Degtyar's crew, 4 tanks. Lieutenant M.I. Evdokimenko's crew, 5 tanks. In addition to the tanks, 1 passenger car, an entire artillery battery, and up to 2 companies of German infantry were destroyed. The German advance in this sector was halted for at least several days. In September 1941, all members of Kolobanov's crew were nominated for the Hero of the Soviet Union Award. The division commander, Hero of the Soviet Union General Baranov, personally signed these nominations. However, someone at the Leningrad Front headquarters felt the award was too generous for a retreating army, and it was reduced to the Order of the Red Banner. The story of the battle at Vavitzy has long been forgotten by the Soviet command. Why? Because in August 1941, the army was retreating, and propagandists considered heroic deeds during that period less effective in boosting morale. Kolobanov was accused of fraternizing with the Finnish side after the Soviet-Finnish War. This was a strong argument against awarding him the title of hero. Journalist and military researcher Lysochkin would later recall, "In any country in the world, Kolobanov should have been awarded all the highest medals for what he accomplished. Why didn't they give him the hero title? I understand they were obliged to give him one. The fact that he and his crew weren't awarded gold stars is an incredible injustice." On February 3, 1942, Kolobanov received only the Order of the Red Banner. The crew members were awarded the Order of Lenin and the Order of the Red Star, worthy awards, but not the ones expected for such a feat. On September 15, 1941, Kolobanov was seriously wounded. While his tank was refueling in a cemetery in the town of Pushkin, a German shell exploded nearby. The tanker suffered shrapnel wounds to the head and spine, as well as concussion. He spent months at the Traumatology Institute in Leningrad, and was then evacuated to hospitals in Sverdlovsk, where he remained until March 1945. After being seriously wounded, Kolobanov requested to return to the army. This surprised the medics and commanders. Such a combat wound often became the end of his military career. But Kolobanov wasn't just a soldier. He was a warrior in the truest sense of the word. On July 10, 1945, already at the end of the war, Kolobanov was appointed deputy commander of the 69th Tank Battalion. The war ended, and he continued his career as an officer, serving in Germany and Belarus in the post-war period. On July 5, 1958, Kolobanov retired with the rank of lieutenant colonel. Life after the war proved strange for a man who had lived through it all. He worked at the Minsk automobile plant and wore the shock worker of communist labor badge. In the early 1970s, a Belarusian film studio planned to make a film about Kolobanov, but abandoned the project. The director stated that such events could not have taken place during the Red Army's retreat in August 1941. This was an indirect criticism. How could a soldier in a retreating army become a legend? On September 8, 1983, a memorial was unveiled at the site of the battle. An IS-2 tank monument towers over the field where the miracle once occurred. Kolobanov himself and his crew members who survived the war were present at the unveiling. In 2006, a street in St. Petersburg was renamed Kolobanovskaya Street, an official recognition of his heroism by the city he helped defend. On the 40th anniversary of Victory Day in 1986, he was awarded the Order of the Patriotic War, First Class. Zinovy Kolobanov died on August 8, 1994, in Minsk. His funeral was attended by veterans, historians, and commanders, people who understood the scale of his heroic deed. He is buried at Chizhovskoye Cemetery, where a memorial will later be erected over his grave, telling the story of his military exploits. However, he never received the title Hero of the Soviet Union. The question of awarding him the title Hero of the Russian Federation, posthumously, was repeatedly raised, but the Russian General Command deemed it inappropriate. Kolobanov's story lives on in culture. The video game World of Tanks established the Kolobanov Medal, an award for a feat similar to his when a single tank destroys 5 or more enemy vehicles. In 2020, the feature film Tank Man was filmed, with the main character, tanker Andrei Gradov, based on Kolobanov, played by actor Alexei Chadov. But his most important memory is his combat feat, which has entered history books, the hearts of tankers, and the memory of that terrible war. 1 man, 1 tank, and 22 enemies lie in flames. This is not just a number. It is a symbol of how, in the darkest hours of war, human courage, skill, and willingness to sacrifice become a true wall against the enemy. Kolobanov's last words about the war, which he uttered in his memoirs. I was often asked, was it scary? But I am a military man. I received orders to fight to the death, and that means the enemy can only pass through my position when I am dead. I accepted the order to carry it out, and no fears arose in me, nor could they arise.